Welcome to Meet the Member, a podcast from the Equipment and Tool Institute. In this series, we sit down with ETI members from across the automotive tool and equipment industry to learn more about who they are, what they do, and the role they play in supporting vehicle repair around the world. From diagnostics and equipment to software, training, and innovation, these conversations shine a light on the people behind the products and services that keep workshops moving. I'm Winston Lee, MD of ETI in Europe, and in each episode I'll be meeting with members to hear their stories, their journeys, and their perspectives on our industry. Let's get started. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Meet the Member podcast with ETI. I'm Winston Lee and I'm here in Bridgewater with James Dillon at TechTopics headquarters. So
Indeed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Winston, and welcome to sunny Bridgewater.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. So this is the hiatus of between training sessions.
This is, yeah. So we're on a fallow week this week, in between the madness of training. So it's an opportunity for us to catch our breath, tidy up, and prepare for the next phase.
Well, we saw you in October at our event in Lippstadt. What's sort of been keeping you busy from then until now?
Gosh, there's lots happening. I suppose on the technical front, which still amazes me really, but from a garage perspective, and which leads on to a training demand, we're really seeing AdBlue and NOx reduction problems out there, and technicians and garages kind of struggling to fill those things and solve those problems. So that's quite a big deal for us. On the training front, and there's we've got a software product development ongoing, which is again taking up some of my time specifically, which is quite interesting about the philosophy of Diag and decision support for garages and technicians, and that's coming to the end of a kind of long development process, which is again quite exciting.
Okay, yeah, I was reading your quick guide to relative compression.
Oh yes,
yeah,
really quite good. Yeah, it goes down a treat. We've actually done a video for all of the social medias yesterday on exactly the same thing. The virtue of doing a non-intrusive test to prove or disprove things at the outset. Save stripping things down. It's a novel. It's not a novel way because it was in the Allen and the Bear machines of the 1970s, but it seems to have lost favour and then gained favour again. So, it really is quite an interesting way of doing things. Abstract thinking for diagnosis. How would you use a current flow to prove or disprove mechanical effort?
I remember the old laptop engine analyzers, back in the day. What was it, the Ferret?
Yes,
I think it was the Ferret.
The Ferret,
Yeah.
They did, of testing. And of course, the brilliant thing about those machines, Winston, was that they enforced a process.
Yes.
And they started off with, if your battery's no good, okay, don't go anywhere else. And that relative compression and battery analysis was the fundamental. And then if it passed that, it would allow you on to the next in the sequence. And you might then look at, the engine running, and then you would look at ignition, and then you would look at fuel. And then finally you would get to the emissions. And there was a lovely inferred process that back in the day, kind of people were just pressing the next button, not having to think, and it would guide you and present this magic printout at the end and say your distributor cap is worn, and, or something like that. So, and actually the comfort that we had, and we didn't know how lucky we were in those days, of course, with the kind of guided fault finding process of the sequence of, get the printout and it tells you what's wrong. I think the complexity of the modern car now, people think that's still present with a fault code, of course, and we know how detached that is from reality. So,
you get a ream of A4 now with a printout.
You do.
Logs. It's not just one page.
No, you get logs and JSON file and XML and all sorts of YAML files, and you go, what on earth's all this?
Yeah.
Does it tell me what's wrong still?
Silver bullet.
Probably not. Yeah.
So I'm sat in front actually here, and no one can't see this obviously because it's audio, but I'm sat in front of an interesting contraption. Are we allowed to talk about it?
Yes, yeah. The world will see it. It's a light board. That's what it's called. So, should I describe it?
I think you should describe it.
Yeah. I don't know how big it is, but it's kind of maybe 4.5 foot across. Yeah, by maybe 2 or 3 foot tall, and it's a big perspex sheet that's lit It's in a frame, and the frame has got embedded in it LEDs, and the LEDs shine bright white light into the panel, but the panel doesn't light up. And then we use some special chalk pens, and the chalk pens diffuse the light from the perspex, and it really pops and glows. And the videoing that we're going to do then is sort of done in the dark. There's a black background behind the board, and we light the presenter, and then the ink sort of pops off the board, and it looks like when you see the video of you're drawing things in midair. And the premise behind the development is it's a very interesting way to present complex subjects through pictures rather than be just talking about stuff and waggling one's arms. You can draw some pictures and then kind of paint the picture and draw the story. So it's part of our social media.
Paint the picture literally
in midair, with crayon pens, and they're pens that you see the pubs that draw the menus outside.
Yes,
yeah, that's the kind of ink. It's a chalk ink. Yeah, and we've stolen the idea from IBM, and they do a series of videos on YouTube about all sorts of subject matter, cybersecurity and AI, and some in-depth looks at some of their product line. And I came across the video and thought, oh, that's really quite interesting. And then dug into how they did it, and ended up then making one, as you do.
Yeah. I guess they're not that easy to come by, but can you just buy them off the shelf? Or?
I think you can. Yeah, I think you can. I think there are several versions that you can get, but we've custom built one that fits here particularly well. So it's sitting on top of a trolley. And we've made this kind of quick release. It's a bit like, you strip down a rifle into its constituent parts. You make 3 clicks and it just appears as a pile of bits. This one, we have to kind of store it somewhere as well in between using it. So we've made the legs and arms come off, and it hangs up underneath, on the back wall underneath a sheet. So it takes about 2 minutes to pack it out, unpack and repack.
Yeah.
So, the idea
because we're sat in one of your training rooms at the moment, so you wouldn't want to be delivering training sessions from behind that, I guess.
No. Only if the crowd got rowdy, maybe. Yeah. It would prevent the tomatoes and stuff being thrown from the back of the crowd.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's a good idea. Well, I've been lucky enough to have a demo, but it is, it's going to be really interesting to see those videos. Are you going to do that on YouTube then, or? Yeah. So we're lucky to have a full-time marketing person. So weirdly, for a training company, we found the transition behind connecting with our clients used to be mail shots and letters. And then, as time's gone on, the age profile has shifted. In fact, we recently have done the 3rd generation of one of the families we look after. We trained the granddad back in the Krypton days. Right. We trained the son, and now we've trained the grandson. And they're a family business down in Devon. And it's so lovely to see that. But our mechanism for reaching our clients, we've had to adapt. And that's really meant that we've had, for the last 2 or 3 years, had a big focus on social media. So we do short videos and slightly longer form content on YouTube. And we have a bit of a podcast thing going on as well. So really finding a way to get the message across to our users in a way that they like to ingest it. So we have to be really conscious that we're delivering the right sort of thing to the right people in the right way. Yes, which is quite novel, really. Yeah. So how can people find you then?
Oh, so you can find us on YouTube again with the handle of Technical Topics. Yeah, and the same on Facebook. We have a page, and then we have shorts, the small videos that are 90 seconds. We pick a topic, and we talk about something in a light and interesting manner, to try and invoke some level of recognition that you've got that problem or that's the solution for you. And they're informative and hopefully kind of get you thinking about things slightly differently. Yes. We're not overtly selling on those platforms. It's more about education and indicating a different way of maybe doing it. So,
So keep an eye open for the light board.
Yeah, the light board.
Future.
Yeah, so hopefully the next. If we know what month we're in now, it'll be in the next few weeks, I would think. We'll do some we've done some trials with it. We just have to get the rhythm sorted out now of doing it. For the YouTube and the Facebook, we then put some time across. We might spend a day batch producing a number of videos, and then they're released over the intervening periods. So we're kind of doing training and other things. So we batch produce some content and then release it, drip feed it out there. So we're doing something a couple of times a week. You'll see something from us, but we will have done that in advance, just to manage the scheduling and setting up the workshop. So so we'll batch produce a number of these how-to videos and interesting lightboard things, and then they'll make their way out into the big bad world.
Excellent. So we're talking about AdBlue and trends and things that you're seeing. Have you seen any sort of noticeable shifts in the type of issues that workshops are dealing with now and coming to ask you about? Yes,
yeah. I think the technicality of the vehicles, because of legislation, is driving advancements, and I think also the demand from the car user expecting it to play their iPhone and display the dashboard up on the windscreen. The demand from the consumer electronics angle has made cars more complicated with comfort opening systems and remote key access and all of these other things that from a new car perspective you need to have all the whistles and bells. I think that's probably driven the technology into the vehicle, which when it's outside of the network under warranty that garages are seeing them, the garages are being dragged along by the advancement of technology, and sometimes that's a bit of a challenge, whether it's the nature of the fault or the way the symptom manifests itself. So technology in itself, if you think about some of the different networks that are on a car, we've now got Ethernet on the vehicle, and kind of that's a bit of a strange one for a garage technician who's used to using a multimeter has now got a connection problem, or connectivity. The thing won't connect to the internet. I mean, how's that ever the technician's responsibility?
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's the over-the-air software updates not working correctly. So I think technology is forcing the pace, and garages are having trouble to keep up, or maybe it's a mindset shift that you've got to have training now. You can't absorb this stuff by osmosis. You can't, in your sleep, suddenly be able to diagnose a over-the-air update connectivity problem. You have to come somewhere for training.
Yes.
And I think what we've seen probably, Winston, is people realizing that you have to invest in that training piece. And thankfully, we're able to support our clients with that level of training to ensure that they can offer a robust and reliable service to their clients, that they themselves are comfortable working on this. Because I think what we have seen is with the technician, with the skills crisis, there are many jobs out there that we as an industry have to make sure that the life of a technician is a comfortable one. And being uncomfortable in not knowing the technology, or having a difficult job to solve when you haven't got the key skills or information, has become a focus of garage owners, and they're trying to do what they can to make the technician job ready, fault ready, and be comfortable in that job, so they can retain, obviously the technician's comfortable doing it, and they can offer a good service to their clients. So we are seeing garages proactively train people for retention, development, and ultimately good customer service to their end users. So technology is the big driver. And when you look at you can't ever look outside, but I think we're in a position in the automotive industry, repairing 3 and 4 year old cars, that it's very challenging and difficult because of technology. And that's aside maybe how we diagnose it with the tools that we've got. So scan tool, fault code reader, which came from the engine analyzer. We're now so far down the track of computer to computer connectivity, maybe remotely, maybe through the OBD. And I think analyzing data, matching symptoms, trying to understand the root cause has become very complicated.
You think that's a frustration then for technicians, that things have got more complicated and they don't necessarily know? Do you think they're blaming themselves, or do you think they're pointing at the manufacturers? Or
well, I think cars and technology, of course, that's where it emanates from. So cars are so darn complicated. Why is it? That's always the chin-scratching moment for a technician. Why is it this hard? But when you look at the bigger picture, it's that hard because the consumer wants that type of car on one hand. It's that hard because legislation dictates for the car to operate within the parameters of the regulations, it has to have complicated systems on it. So the car is definitely seen as the villain of the piece, I think, from a technician's point of view. And I think because we've had, I suppose that we're over the crest of the EV. That was a big shift in people's mindset. Crikey, I've gone from knowing the internal combustion engine and cam belts and valve clearances and tappets and oils and filters and turbochargers to all of a sudden I've gone from a turbocharger to a flux capacitor. And crikey, what a shock that was. And I think nicely that transition between internal combustion and electric vehicles made everyone stop and go, crikey, there is new stuff to know here, and I as a technician have to take responsibility. I as a garage owner have to take responsibility, and it's down to me to keep up with this stuff to be able to do my job.
Do you think that there's anything particular that workshops are still getting wrong in terms of diagnostics?
Gosh, I still think there's a focus possibly on the machine and not the man.
Yeah.
So my critical thinking skills would be number one. So what skill do technicians really need to focus on? It's critical thinking skills, and then it's probably understanding the tools that they're using are only giving data to feed the critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And I think often people miss the critical thinking skills, and they absorb the data and act on it literally without any critical evaluation.
Yeah.
And I think probably that's what we're seeing. Scan tools are often blamed maybe for not being any good. It told me, insert thing, that it came up with a problem and I fitted it and it's still the same.
Yeah.
I think we're way past that now, where we know that the machine can give us data. And so, critical thinking skills, but also then I suppose the demand on diagnostic equipment companies to have a machine that can connect to the vehicle, to all of the systems that the guys and girls need, to provide the requisite data for them to be able to make the diagnosis. That's a huge challenge when you look at the complexity of the vehicle. So we sort of feel for the scan tool manufacturers having to keep up with this and having to supply the technicians with the data, but we would again very much encourage the technicians to beef up their critical thinking skills and analytics to be able to come up with the root cause to the problem.
Yeah. Is that something that you build into your training here then?
Yes, probably one of the things that over the last 2 or 3 years that we've really done is about fostering critical thinking skills and analytics, as maybe sometimes we get tied up with the subject matter course. So this course deals with CAN bus and in-vehicle networking, or AdBlue and NOx reduction systems. But we take a good chunk of time to do the critical thinking skills, to remind people that the origin of diagnosis is a Greek word, which means to differentiate between obviously good and bad. And so critical thinking skills are in that, here's your bunch of data. Some of this is going to give you a clue to what's wrong. Just remember how to do the diagnosis. And we take the steer from medicine in a way, and we really support the sort of the scientific method to decision making, so that the whole, based on data. And we love some of the sayings from medicine. My favorite one is, when you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras. And so there's lots of things that we, to keep people on the straight and narrow, because sometimes when you don't know, you often think there's a lot of psychology involved as well. So we quite like Daniel Kahneman's book about thinking fast and slow. This is about System 1 and System 2 thinking, and you wouldn't really believe it's relevant, but we decompose that and teach technicians about the different ways that the human mind works. For instance, biasing is one of the things that can really catch people out. Yeah. If you think X is wrong with the car, you'll kind of work away trying to prove that that's the case in the face of obvious data that says it's not. Yeah. So we focus on those things about just be careful of biases and the way the human mind works. And I worked with one of my close friends and colleagues, Andy Crook, about we kind of got into this. I got into this through Andy really, and we did a session many moons ago about the origin of this. And we've hard baked that into how to be a more effective technician. It's partly the cognition skills, which you wouldn't necessarily think. People think it's nuts and bolts and wires and multimeters, and actually it's thinking about thinking.
And something I remember you touching on or talking about in October was this whole biasing and people leaning towards AI to help them, and that naturally follows the human condition of trying to satisfy you, and therefore biasing its answers based on your questions.
The most powerful question for all the AI stuff that I've ever done, just two things. One is, whenever it comes up with a statement, ask it, "Are you sure?" Because you'll be surprised what it comes back with. And my other favourite one about propositions is to ask it to steelman the answer it gave you. And it will. What my favourite statement is, it comes back and said, "Oh, that's good practice," and then it goes and basically, refutes its own previously decided statement. But the bias, of course, you're absolutely right, aren't you? The AI has been trained on humans and all the biases that exist, and it's essentially an echo chamber of word predictions.
Yes. Yeah, just to make you feel happy.
Yes.
There was something that I saw on. There's a guy on YouTube, I think, that does all sorts of things. Asks ChatGPT lots of questions and challenges it. And one was the upside down cup. I can't drink out of this cup, and then described it. And someone's obviously given you a novelty cup. It's no concept of the idea of turning it the other way up, and all of a sudden it becomes viable as a vessel. But it's hilarious.
It is hilarious, and if you get deeper into that, I think the guy's called Yann LeCun. I think he was big into Meta, and he's the grandfather of AI, and he's moved away from the word prediction model into real world, and he's just set up a new company that's attracted billions of funding at minute one, and he's kind of emphasis is we have to move away from the language models and the predictions into a kind of real world, because that spatial awareness of knowing what a cup is, because a cup is basically 3 letters in an array, and if it's got a context, you kind of mean, is it a shape with your hand or is it a vessel? There's so many unconnected things. The human mind's brilliant at setting a context and knowing it's that kind of cup. The real world model, I can see that makes sense, that the machine has got spatial awareness. And of course, Tesla Tesla cars are essentially 5 cameras simulating real world data to build the model for his robots, aren't they? And I think when we think about AI, I think the real world AI, or whatever they're calling it, this guy Yann LeCun, is probably onto something. I think we've had fun with the language models, and it's a bit like novelty. The statements that come out of crackers at Christmas, they kind of make you smile and laugh, and there is something intriguing and interesting about it. But I don't think we're at the end of what the AI can do for us. Maybe the benefits it's got, and how it can help. But we still, again, have to have that cognition and be skeptical and challenge it. There's a lot of lazy thinking behind people that are using AI, and then they scoff when it gets it wrong. But your proposition was probably off. That's why the AI's come up with rubbish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, feed rubbish in, rubbish out.
Rubbish in. It's always been the same.
It's always been the same.
Yeah.
The ones and zeros, you can't go wrong. Binary is binary, really.
I was talking to someone about it the other day, and the difference between AI and what it sees, because obviously you can show it stuff now, but its perception of what it sees in comparison with the human brain. You walk, as an example, you walk into a room, you've got a table set out for people to have dinner, everything's set up, ready to go. Well, if you walk in and within microseconds, you know what it's for, the context, everything is just there. Maybe if you've grown up in a dark box and then all of a sudden someone brings you out, you wouldn't know. But that's how these robots are. When you say, "Oh yeah, we need a robot in the house to do all of these chores," well, what's it going to do? Is it going to come in and see the plates on the table and think, "Oh, those need to go in the dishwasher then"? Well, just a minute, they've got no food on them. They're not being used, and so there's just so many complications and nuances in actually being able to implement all of this stuff. I think we are, a long way from it. I was listening to someone today about some of the quantum stuff, and they think there's this big concern that we're not far away from people being able to crack bank security, etc., and yet we're probably 1 or 2 decades away from seeing real shift in that. But it's like with automotive, we've got to prepare for that now, because otherwise the horse is bolted, and then you're trying to tidy up afterwards. And there's a lot of stuff that we want to talk about actually in June about how we prepare with legislation that's coming out. So you've recently moved into this new role with IAAF. How's that fitting in, day to day? What does that involve?
Yeah, so it's very new. So I'm still in the handover period with my esteemed colleague Neil Pattermore, who's done the job for a number of years. So I've got my apprentice L plates on, learning the ropes at the minute. So yeah, it's an interesting and intriguing role. And really it's involving, I suppose, from the perspective of the members of the IAAF, and that's kind of made up of garages and parts companies and diagnostic tool manufacturers. It's making sure, I suppose, there's fair and equitable access to the market, that the whole competition piece works, and legislation that is out there is implemented correctly, I suppose, by the relevant departments in governments, that we're doing the right thing, reading between the lines in a way. So implementation is sensible to help, facilitate the market and the way it works. So I don't know the full extent of the role. I can't really answer the question fully. The bits I've seen at the moment are of this, and there's very, very interesting. Of course, the hottest topic in that role probably is the SERMI piece at the minute. Yeah, that is, the hot potato, and that's a big focus of attention for garages, particularly. With the access to information and diagnostics and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's proving to be very interesting. It fits in nicely with, I suppose, my role in the industry up to now has been kind of beating the drum for the independent from a training perspective, and enabling the garages to be equipped and facilitating their knowledge about dealer tools and portals and how to do it. And in my view, this has enabled me to probably step up a little bit and have a bigger influence, the same emphasis or impetus behind it. But, working with the IAAF, who've got representation of a big chunk of the market, I can have probably a bigger influence. It's the same message, but it's going further and maybe being a bit louder because of the influence of that organisation. So it's the same thing, but I'm probably being given a bit of a megaphone to be able to do it with.
So sort of a key point at the moment is the SERMI thing, and trying to educate and get that understanding across to the people that are wondering what to do with it and how to use it.
Yes, and the impact it brings, and I suppose in a way also whenever there's a change, it's why the change has been made and what the benefit is, how that works to the garage's advantage. And some garages seeing it as a problem and a blocker and a restriction, when in fact it's the other way around. The SERMI scheme and block exemption, which goes behind it, really is all about enabling access. So there's an education piece to do for some garages who are saying, hang on, this is restricting my ability to do X, Y, and Z. And in fact, it's facilitating that, because without SERMI, we could end up only having the permission of the manufacturer to access that data, when SERMI kind of implements the right to have access to that data, security, repair, maintenance. And I think the good garages out there know that SERMI is a great thing. It can restrict nefarious operations which bring the trade into disrepute. It ensures that you're validated and you're secure and you're legitimate. And all garages that are in that sphere of legitimate and validated, you can only see that as a good thing. Of course, there's friction in the process, and I think that's what people are seeing at the minute. It's caused a bit of friction and disturbance in the force, partly because it's come very quickly to the UK, and there hasn't been the lead-in. I think that the European nations that have got it have had. We seem to have been a bit rushed. If I put my diplomatic hat on, we seem to have got to this point quite quickly. February, there was nothing. In April, it's happening.
I mean, we've obviously known about it for a long time. Yeah. So do you think the regulators understand what the real world challenges are with relation to it?
I don't know necessarily that they do. Although the scheme is set out and it has worked in other countries, I think what it's trying to achieve is also very good. But the implementation of it, do they understand exactly what it means? I'm not sure. I think if I put my technical topics hat on and come out of the IAAF, I look across to the government's thought about SERMI should be voluntary rather than mandated. And that probably demonstrates a lack of understanding about the benefits of SERMI and how it actually should have been mandated and not made voluntary. So you hit the nail on the head. No, I don't think they've really understand the government's perspective at that stage was it's a voluntary scheme and therefore the market will sort itself out. When in fact, when we look at the market hasn't sorted itself out in a way, which is why we've got block exemption and SERMI is a part of it. So I think there's a bit, an education piece or to join the dots together why SERMI exists and why block exemption exists and how that facilitates essentially choice for the repairer and choice for the client, the end user and the consumer. Yeah, I don't think those are all joined up in everyone's mind.
No. And we were talking before about some manufacturers that have offloaded some of that, I guess, security check onto SERMI and others that maybe haven't done that. And I mean, from my perspective, I would see that as another opportunity for ambiguity all the way along the line. And really, like you say, if it had been a mandated thing, then we would have had a lot more consistency across the board rather than this, almost like pick and mix type choice that people have got.
Yeah, exactly. I think because there are essentially those manufacturers that are outside SERMI and those that are inside, it makes it a little bit tricky for garages. In fact, to some manufacturers, they'll have an independent agreement with for access to information, and others are under a scheme which some are members of. And so garages have now got kind of parallel before let's be right, before SERMI came along, most of the garages doing this stuff had their individual agreements with each of the manufacturers that were working well. SERMI coming along has changed that, but only for some of them. So it's a bit like it's sunny and raining at the same time. And should I have an umbrella up or a Macintosh on, or should I have really, it's a very mixed environment. So garages find themselves having to have individual agreements with the manufacturer on one hand, and on the other hand, they have an agreement with the scheme, of which gives me access to several manufacturers. But in the voluntary basis, it's very, very tricky. Who do I see for access? I think from a perspective of if it goes wrong, so if we can't get access correctly, those guys and girls from the manufacturers that are in the SERMI scheme, there's a very nice route to pointing out there's an issue and getting the issue resolved. Yeah. For those manufacturers that are outside of the SERMI scheme, it's still a one-to-one relationship, and somebody has to chase them up and point out that there's potentially an issue. And what the SERMI scheme does is it lays out roles and responsibilities really well. The voluntary scheme doesn't do that, so it's more difficult if we have an issue.
Yes. So moving on to something else we've just been talking about earlier about PTI and emissions. I've just come back from a conference in Bern, which was about particle science.
Lovely part of the world.
Yeah, very nice part of the world. Yeah, lovely clean air.
Yes, lovely.
Ironically.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of discussion about NPTI, and there is an increasing focus with PN and NOx. So how significant do you think that is moving forwards?
So I've got, I suppose, two perspectives on it. One is from, if I put my diagnostic hat on, we through the AdBlue and NOx efficiency diagnosis route have been measuring NOx on diesel engines, particularly using tools and equipment from our good friends at Kane, which enables a very, very succinct diagnostic process for an AdBlue problem. And so NOx in the diagnostic sphere works really well because it gives us direction when we have a car with an AdBlue fault, because they drop into one or two categories. You've either got a NOx production problem or you have a NOx reduction problem. So the NOx production problem is something on the engine has gone wrong, the EGR isn't functioning, or you've got a combustion anomaly, and that's leading to elevated NOx production. In that case, that can swamp the reduction system, manifest itself as a reduction problem when it's a production problem. So yeah, the tools from Kane are brilliant because we can make a very quick and easy measurement in the gas flow and get diagnostic guidance whether we need to go upstream to production or downstream to reduction. So great. Particulate matter counting also from a diagnostic perspective is really useful for diagnosing, again, more filter issues. So these are particular filter problems. We can see very easily and quickly that we have a filter problem, and there's a prevalence of cracking filters through whatever root cause we don't know, but let's say the filter is cracking, and we're seeing DPF pressure problems, or we're seeing onboard car particular counting issues. Again, that from a diagnostic perspective is really easy for a garage then to do pre and post particulate counting and diagnose the root cause of the issue. So from that side of it, we're finding it brilliant. We love it. It's great. It's very detailed information that we need to make a very easy and distinct analysis. I think from the other side then, from making the world a better place to be, and checking the performance of the emission control systems, I think it's long overdue, to be honest. The opacity test was old 30 years ago, let's be honest. Yeah. And we've persevered. We've kind of not wanted to grasp that nettle or pop that balloon, and we find ourselves in the situation where cars can have compromised emission control systems and nobody will ever know. And that can't be right.
No.
So I think the big, one of the big challenges, and I think we alluded to it earlier on, is in markets that have implemented this as a test regime, there is a certain amount of, oh my goodness, when you start to analyze this and you see the magnitude, the order of magnitude of the problem that potentially exists, that if you come in hard with a hard level at a point in time, there's lots of tears in the marketplace because, oh dear, I didn't realize. And how do you manage the consumer? So the car owner that didn't realize, the car owner that wants to solve that, how do you manage the supply chain? And all of a sudden the demand for, be it EGR systems or particulate filters or what have you, the demand increases drastically. And that's balanced against it. It is absolutely the right thing to do. And anyone that wants to, have a long and fruitful life doesn't want to be breathing excessive particulate matter.
No.
And therefore measuring it as part of a legislative test has to be the right thing.
You've sort of gone down the path that I was going to try and take you, actually, which was, in terms of modifications with DPF and EGR, how big a problem do you think it is?
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive. DPF and EGR particularly. And I think there was a period in time when they were newer that it was a bigger problem. And I think the market's matured and the knowledge in the field of how to fix these properly has become better. And I think it's less of a problem now because guys and girls are used to knowing how to diagnose it, understanding the root cause behind problems, and treating the root cause rather than adjusting the symptom manifestation. Let's take the DPF off because it keeps blocking. People are now very au fait into why that happens, and then we'll treat the root cause. So I think we went through a period of the new DPFs. Locks were taken off when they shouldn't have been, and so there are cars running around with compromised emission control systems. But latterly, that's become less of a problem as the trade has become used to doing it, and it's become also a little bit frowned upon by even members of the trade, of other guys in the trade doing it. It's not seen as a professional repair.
No.
And then we turn to NOx reduction, and I think we're probably at the phase we were with DPFs that it's still seen as a route to solving an unsolvable problem is to remove it. And kind of there's a freedom of being able to do that because nobody's checking. And nobody would know the car's had a DPF removed or an AdBlue system removed if the software's been fattled with and if hardware's been adjusted. People that are doing that, compromising the emission control system, fear nothing about being caught because there are no checks. So if you are removing them, you do it with impunity, essentially.
Interestingly, with so it comes down to cost a little bit, doesn't it? With AdBlue and people having to put yet another thing in that's a consumable. And I think with HGV, there are checks in terms of mileage and money that's being spent on AdBlue additive to make sure that the two things correlate. Yeah. So it's not something that you can do so easily with the average driver, is it?
No.
In a passenger car. But
no, nobody's checking. And having said that, we must be fair. And garages that are looking at understanding how the system functions and are doing the diagnosis would prefer to offer their client, the car owner, a great solution that leads to the problem being fixed. And some of the problems, they're making a repair that's robust and reliable. It's preserving the emission control side of the vehicle, and the car goes on for many miles operating cleanly. But the flip side is, if you're on a budget and our blue car suddenly springs a problem and the repair bill looks multiple thousands of pounds, we have to be realistic and say that the average consumer may not have the money to spend to preserve that system, and if they don't, there is no consequence.
Yes.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
So difficult. We've got an open loop management problem there.
We had a EU vertical group meeting on Wednesday, and we were talking about this, and Andy Brook from Maverick and I had a call beforehand earlier in the week about this exact thing, and what happens if stricter regulations come in terms of testing for particle number and for NOx. What happens to rectify that? Do you end up overnight with a car park that's full of vehicles that are not repairable because of the various different methods people have used to get around the problem, normally modifying software in some way, which maybe is not able to be put back to standard using standard processes that you would normally utilise on a piece of dealer equipment, never mind aftermarket. Where do you see that? I mean, we're talking about it and we see it as a big issue. Do you think that that's going to be a challenge?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think, and you've hit the nail on the head. It is a deeper technical solution or modification of the vehicle's hardware and software outside of the scope of that which the original manufacturer, would have put into the service network. How do you turn it back? Because I suppose in a way, is it legitimate to have a piece of equipment in your workshop that can adjust software outside of the methods as prescribed by either the car manufacturer or the hardware manufacturer? And if you don't have that because you're not deleting or removing, to suddenly have that to restore it, it's a big ask for a workshop. It's a big learning curve. Could they do it? Should they do it? I mean, interestingly, if you look at the Volkswagen emission scandal, should we call it that, Dieselgate, when they had to adjust software in the field, they came across instances of, I'm now taking software from version A, which we thought was flawed. In the meantime, somebody's been in there and deleted swirl flaps or EGR or DPF and put software version B. And then the manufacturer comes along with software version C, which corrects version A. And all of a sudden now it's finding all of the deleted hardware because now they've restored it to subset. And Volkswagen in themselves, had a huge issue with software, hardware anomalies when the software had been restored. How do you get around that? It really is. You can't just reverse the process. It's very difficult. Yeah. And it leaves a big question for the market. So all of these vehicles then that suddenly fail, do you have a soft limit initially that gives people some level of notice that your car is above what we would consider the threshold, and here's your move to get that restored? Is that the scrappage scheme under a different banner? So we're not scrapping it, but we're telling you've got 24 months to scrap it and make an alternate provision. I think to restore vehicles with adjusted software and hardware is probably uneconomical. It's not an economic way, although it's the right thing to have done. Of course, what we don't often see, and we come across it here in the diagnostic process, we may revert to original manufacturer software to prove that it's had funky software and hardware removed because all of the fault lights and prescriptive behavior occurs, and we know then for sure it's had hardware adjusted and we're never going to fix that car. Because all the time you're trying to run down a standard diagnostic procedure with a funky piece of software that doesn't give you the data values, it doesn't give you, we as a garage are stuck knowing what's wrong with the car. And so we've got that type of equipment, here, so we can put the OE software back in using that equipment and then restore it back to the broken way, if you like, that it was happy with, because otherwise we've made the car worse in our way. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place in doing the diag, working it's got mitigated systems. We restore it to the OE software. We see then it's got a problem. The client can't get it fixed, and we have to turn it back to the non-compliant mode to enable the client to carry on with their life. It's really tricky. Really tricky.
Yeah. And those are the questions, aren't they? Is it always going to be possible to do it? And then who's going to pay for it?
Who's going to pay for it? And should we as a garage really be happy putting compromised software back into something? It puts us in a bit of a fix, and we find ourselves in a essentially in a minefield, having only realised you're in a minefield when you're in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But forward and backwards are both perilous.
So what do you think that workshops should be preparing for at the moment then?
Oh, in terms of
that in mind, I suppose.
Yeah, gosh, with that in mind, I think it's always the difficult thing is when they discover there's one of their clients has got a car that's got a compromised system. What's the best advice? Number one, that's a problem. I think number two, if we're going to implement testing, I think the garages want to prepare for how to deliver the news.
Yeah.
Because your car's failed the MOT on this new test. Why? They're going to need to know the why behind that. I think there's probably another implication for types of internal combustion engine. So you're not going to have this problem if you've got a petrol engine or a hybrid. I think it's going to cast a shadow over the value residual of diesel engines from a certain era. And there's a high risk if you own one of these, it could have a compromised system from this date onward. We're running this type of test, and the value of those vehicles will plummet. And I think that's difficult for the market to understand. I think that's difficult for garages who've got a client base that have got, if you look at the split of cars still on new registrations, or still on the car park, isn't it? A vast percentage of vehicles are diesel powered and have got those type of systems on there. It's going to be a challenge. But for garages, I think it's about being aware that this potentially is coming round the corner. But I think it's probably a consumer education piece, which goes beyond the garage.
Yeah.
How does the in inverted commas the powers that be inform people with a diesel engine vehicle if it could be compromised sometime in its history, and from this date forward there could be a potential surprise. You've got an Easter egg in your car waiting to explode the next MOT or the MOT after. It's a very difficult one. I'm glad it's not my decision and I'm not responsible for having to do that. I'll sidestep that nicely.
So what do you think that the role that the tools and data access play in all of this?
Yeah, tools and data are critical, of course, aren't they? Tools and data are critical. I think, having the I suppose if you look at, particularly if we're thinking about compromised systems, then could you run a health check?
Yeah,
is there a health check that you can get some advance notice? I think. Yeah, it's difficult. The data is required essentially to know what you should be looking at, how the system should function from a garage point of view. They also need the tools to be able to do those checks, tests and measurements, to be able to validate not just that, but the whole diagnostic piece really. And those tools and data have to keep pace with the technology. We're talking about cars that have got over the air, they connect to the internet in some way, shape or form. They've got over-the-air updates. They're using Ethernet for control systems. You've got vastly complicated comfort systems with remote access and unlocking and app connection to your telephone. Multitude of systems that are connected to each other. You've got sensors that were analog now are sent. They're using protocols to share data. Where you could use a multimeter to test a sensor. Now, actually, you've got to decode at some level of data stream.
Yes.
If you don't, the data piece of that is knowing a car. When you look at, let's take a pressure sensor on a diesel engine. you can have two cars of a very similar era. One has got an analog sensor, of which requires a multimeter to measure the voltage. The other's got a sense sensor, which you have to use a scan tool or some other decoding tool to understand the diagnosis. And if you get it wrong, you could replace the sensor because you used the wrong measurement technique, not because there was a problem with the sensor.
Yeah.
And so tools and data is absolutely critical in understanding the scope of the vehicle you're working on and applying the right methods and techniques.
Yeah, I was going to say the skills then of the technicians need to keep up with the technology so that you are addressing the right technology with the right tools.
With the right tools, yeah. We have a saying, you can see the thing over in the corner there, we call it the 4 rights of diagnosis.
Yes, I've seen it on there.
Yeah, these are measuring the right thing in the right way at the right time with the right tool. And this is part of the critical thinking skills that we give that natty. This is on a sticker that they stick on their diagnostic machine. And whenever they struggle, we refer them back to the 4 rights. And the basic premise is if your diagnosis is not correct, one of your 4 rights is wrong.
Yes.
And so it's either the wrong way, the wrong tool, something has gone wrong. So we get them, that's a kind of sense check that you're measuring the right thing in the right way at the right time with the right tool. And that's the tools and data piece and the technician all coming together, really, that tripartite of things to effect a good repair. We need it all together. You can't, lose one of those 3 key elements and it all falls down.
We've got our event coming up in June.
Yes.
In Surrey. Is there anything that you're particularly looking forward to?
Oh, having attended the last one in Lippstadt, I found it very invigorating to be in a group, in a room with quite such a diverse mix of people from the industry and those perspectives and challenges and kind of solutions that were bubbling around, and the perspective from different people trying to come up with those solutions and challenges and how they've solved stuff. It's really invigorating. I'm looking forward to it from a attendee point of view because I just love that whole take me out of my comfort zone, give my frame of reference a jolly good shake and see where my thinking's off or where I'm biasing myself or I'm in my little rut. So I love it. It really does shake my perspective. And hearing panels, there's such a vast array of interesting people with different experiences. So the panel discussions for me in Lippstadt were brilliant, that you've got lots of different perspectives on one sort of theme or topic subject area. So it gave me I came away with a load of different things to go and research and to sharpen my thinking of. Some were confirming I'm on the right track and others were challenging my thoughts. So I found that really quite good. So I'm looking forward to more of that. Yeah. Again, the presentations again get you thinking slightly differently. And the social part, the tractor museum will live with me as long as I live. We were looking at that actually with Martin recently. We had some video. We were talking about the tractor. So also the social aspect was really good. It was good to meet those people in a social environment and kick around other things besides work. So it was lovely. It was a thoroughly enjoyable few days.
So on that point then, what conversations do you think attendees should sort of come prepared to have?
I think it's about the issues that you face in your own dimension or sphere of expertise come with the things that are challenging you, and I think about the potentially the problems or the pinch points that you've got, and kick that around with other people who maybe are coming at that from the other angle, the other perspective, and that collaboration and sharing of challenges and also solutions was great, because I love that old saying about the Chinese have got a saying is, in the wise man learns from his mistakes, and the Japanese have got a better saying that the wiser man learns from somebody else's. And I think that kind of sharing of information on somebody's probably been along that track or looking at it from a different perspective can shortcut your learning process. So I would say come along with the challenges that you face and verbalize them and talk about them, and you'll be amazingly surprised at other people's perspectives for helping you overcome them, and also the way you can contribute to somebody else's problem resolution or a different way of thinking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So one final question then.
Yes.
What one thing do you think the industry is not talking enough about right now?
That's a really interesting one. Yeah. what it's not talking about. I think I would have said that the impending challenge about particulate testing and emission compliance. I think the one thing the industry is not talking about, I'll give you a for instance, is there's a longevity of manufacturers that have been around for a long time. There's distress signals about big manufacturers who are having trouble making a living selling cars, partly against the net zero agenda potentially, partly against the robustness of or otherwise of the technology, how they're under pressure maintaining either net zero, EVs, over-the-air updates, infrastructure, challenges in their own networks for people. What would happen if one of these big boys disappeared? Where does that leave the rest of us?
Yeah.
Particularly as the car's now connected. What happens if ... insert big manufacturer no longer exists as of January 2027?
Yeah.
How do we manage?
Yeah.
And and I think we have to. Sometimes there's a diversive role in the aftermarket and OE, and we don't realise that we're locked in a virtuous relationship that sustain each other, and we need each other. And so it shouldn't really be them and us; it should be us and us.
Yeah.
And trying to find a way to ensure people have got a method of transporting themselves around the countryside. People are making money making cars. People are making money fixing cars in the aftermarket, and the consumer has reliable transport because it's an essential service.
Yeah.
So I think that's for me the one thing that will probably keep me up at night is what if.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing you said there, which should be everyone's worst nightmare. You turn your ignition on, you push your button, and then it says updating ...
Yes.
And nothing happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right there.
I think, what happens is the clunk of the door and the sound of footsteps, because Shanks's pony becomes the preferred method of transport in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for inviting me, and great conversation. Look forward to seeing you in June, and looking forward to seeing your light board.
Oh, the trip on the light, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, me
so,
too.
Yeah, I'll keep my eyes open for that. Well, thank you.
Thanks for inviting me on the pod, and thanks for coming down and seeing us here in sunny Bridgewater.
No problem at all. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Meet the Member, a podcast from the Equipment and Tool Institute. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know more about today's guest and the work they do within our industry. If you'd like to find out more about ETI, our members, our future episodes in this series, please visit our website or follow us on LinkedIn. I'm Winston Lee, and thanks again for listening.